I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got a really interesting gentleman that's an expert on AI to join us tonight. Dr. Chris Smedley is his name. He's got a PhD in artificial intelligence. He's a visionary technologist and a futurist. He's dedicated to harnessing AI superintelligence to unlock an era of hyperabundance for humanity. He's got a deep expertise in AI and exponential technologies. He develops innovative solutions to tackle global challenges, from sustainable energy to advanced transportation. Dr. Smedley has collaborated with several industry giants, including Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Singularity University, and the X Prize Foundation. A decade ago, he founded Digital Habits, an exponential technology firm that integrates AI across energy, transportation, humanoid robotics, and beyond, creating fully autonomous products and services to power the mobile communications of tomorrow on land, sea, air, and space. I came across Dr. Smedley when he wrote about Elon Musk. He wrote about AI. He wrote about self-driving autonomous vehicles. And I thought it'd be great to check in with him about what's going on. What's the future? Should we be scared? Should we be excited? What's happening? Dr. Smedley, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Brian. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. AI. Is AI, like some people describe, as revolutionary as the Industrial Revolution or the coming of the internet? Or is it just one more new technology, the fax machine moving to emails?
It's actually far more profound than any of those. In fact, it's the culmination, if you will, of a long road that humanity's gone through to apply technology. And many people are suggesting it will be the fastest adopting technology of all time, far outstripping any others. And ultimately, it will lead to the complete transformation. And if you want to talk about the scary part, we expect that within 5 years, all human cognitive and physical labor will probably be replaced. So we are looking at the downside being things like mass unemployment, but the upside is that we're able to use the technology to massively increase our productivity through robots and other means, as people are doing now. And this is what will lead us to have a world where anyone can have anything they want for ostensibly free. And for those who want to adopt this technology, it will be an untold possibility for the future.
So I'll give you two counterpoints for a second, if I could, and see what your response is. I watched an interview with Gregory Hinton, who I understand is sort of the godfather or grandfather of AI, who has really left the AI companies that he was working with, and is out there right now warning people about AI and suggesting that we need significant government regulation for AI. And then there was a Israeli psychologist, Harari, I think is his name, who's written Homo Sapiens and Homo Deus, and he talks about a world in the future where there will be humans that use AI and medical technologies and a whole bunch of other things, and others that won't, and that one group of humans that have got access to that technology will be like humans, and the rest of us will be like Neanderthals, and we'll almost create two different human races, ones that have got AI and ones that don't. What do you say to those two gentlemen?
They're both correct. So Jeff was my prof at U of T, so I'm very proud of my association with him. And there are many in the AI community. Maybe I'll frame it this way. I'll introduce Peter Diamandis, who you may know, and Ray Kurzweil, and these were both co-founders of Singularity University, where I was faculty. And they present the optimistic scenario, the one that Elon suggests is 80% likely, as a world where abundance can be offered to everyone. And understandably, most of the AI industry, including Ilya Sutskever and others, are cautioning that this is far more powerful than nuclear weapons or any other sort of technology. And, it's understandable that people would be concerned about this, but also to what Mogadad and Harari and others are saying is this will bifurcate the species. Those small number of people that embrace having their minds enhanced through artificial superintelligence, those who say, I'm going to be a part of this transformation on a personal and corporate basis, will likely be the benefactors. And those people who are afraid or uncertain about the future will find themselves on the unemployment lines and not knowing what to do. So this is a large portion of what Digital Habitats is evolved in, is to help communities navigate what is called the singularity, which is a point that originally Kurzweil had suggested would happen around 2040, but it looks like we could be doing this by 2035 or earlier. And what this means is that at that point, everything that humanity has been and known will transform. And, when Elon talks about the possibility of 100 billion humanoid robots on the planet, what we're really seeing is once in humanity's existence point in time that we're all fortunate enough to live in, where we'll be able to transform our biologic selves into synthetic life and travel the cosmos. And this will be undoubtedly terrifying to many, many people. Those that live ordinary existence are going to be totally disrupted. And our hope is to help them prepare for that eventuality.
I interviewed a professor at the American Military College in the United States who specializes in war studies. And we were talking about drones and Ukraine. And he said that war is changing and is changing dramatically. And it's for the first time war that can take place without human casualties. And he said that that actually is scary because one of the reasons why people stop wars and find wars abhorrent is because people die. And there's big issues in that regard. And he says that increasingly, drones, and he thinks in the future robots will be the ones at the front lines, such that you can have governments that are interested in territorial advancement, like Russia invading Ukraine, and we'll do that more often now because they can have robots and drones do it. What do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely correct. Elon himself has said many times that there will be no humans on the battlefield of the future. And if you look at places like Ukraine and others, he says it's going to be a killing field. You would never put a human being up against a Terminator. So, that's the horrific side of the potential of war, but it also incentivizes people that, instead of using our emotional um, abhorrence, and emotional concerns about death, we look at why is it that we're launching all of these machines at each other to gain territory or political advantage. And maybe this also needs to transition to a more profound sociological problem, which is, to be blunt, human stupidity. So throughout the history of our world, the limiting factor on our ability to move forward has been people's inability to comprehend things, politicians' desires to use propaganda and emotional leverage to get people to do things. And ultimately, this becomes reflected in an undermining of the concepts of democracy. So, here in Canada, we've recently had an election that was highly emotional, and it turns out that that emotionality doesn't serve Canadian interests because you want to be able to say, how can we use technology and AI itself to elevate the dialogues that we're having and remove our personal conflicts with each other, both in our homes and our nations, so that we can get past our mental weaknesses, as it were.
Jeffrey Hinton in the interview that I listened to was warning us of AI taking over and wanting to control us humans, and he suggested that we needed significant government regulation to ensure that that future doesn't happen. The bill in the United States, the big beautiful bill that passed recently, really takes regulation off AI, and the pitch was that if we want to compete with China and other developers of AI worldwide, we need to have the least amount of regulation possible. What's your answer? Is Jeffrey Hinton right that we need significant regulation, or is Donald Trump right that we need less regulation, the most minimal regulation as possible?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll comment on from David Sachs, who's the AI czar at the White House right now and a member of the All In podcast. Their bill is specifically designed to ensure that the United States becomes the superpower in AI, that it outcompetes China, that it outcompetes everyone. And the reason for this is not just military, it's economic. So, what many people don't understand is that in Elon's association with Trump, there was a number of conversations where Elon informed him of these trends, and he managed to turn that into policy. And the key takeaway was one, AI is irreversible. You cannot put the genie back in the box, you cannot regulate it. Two, that your best option is to accelerate its development so that you become the smartest AI anywhere. Then three, apply that to growing your economy 10x or 100x, reducing costs and anticipating that people are not going to be operating in jobs in the same way that they did the past. And this is why you're seeing Trump talk about it in such positive terms. And this also extends to automobility and Sean Duffy's conversations about having a national self-driving vehicle framework as a strategic defense. You can't have this technology be in the hands of the Chinese or others where they could have vehicles driving themselves and doing all of this stuff. And so, I'm also suggesting this is something that every country in the world will need to take to heart. And we see the trillions and tens of trillions of dollars that are being poured into AI. There's no way to regulate this. So, people like Jeff and others, it's understandable, the sentiment, but it is an unstoppable force. So we might as well embrace it and figure out how we can improve ourselves.
When the interviewer that I saw with Jeffrey Hinton asked Professor Hinton about the future, he said, given what you described, what would you tell your kids or your grandkids to focus on? And he said, plumbing. They should become plumbers because I know that there'll always be a need for plumbers. I'm not sure whether there'll be a need for anyone else. So what do you tell your kids and grandkids to focus on?
I think that's also misguided. And I only point you to the fact that we're going to be having robots do our plumbing, taking care of our kids, walking our dogs. And, Elon has said everyone is going to want their own personal R2D2. And again, it's not just his company. There are hundreds of companies right now that are starting in this field. So what you're seeing is first the disruption of of cognitive labor, office work, and the like, as we're seeing right now. But secondarily, what is coming right around the corner is the iRobot era. So, there will be no future jobs for people. So what we recommend is the first thing we need to do is to change our mindset and figure out, in a world that doesn't have work and capitalism as economic drivers, what becomes more critical is, what is our purpose and meaning? What is our long-term life strategy? And when we also look at potential for longevity, to live hundreds of years, it creates an opportunity for people to cast off how we've thought in the past and not adhere to, I need a job to earn dollars to pay rent, and all of what Tony Seba and others talk about as an extractive capitalist system. And I need to figure out how, if I had infinite intelligence, I could do unbelievably great things. So that's what I tell all the young people, is to shift from trying to figure out how you fit into the world as it is today and see how you can expand your own mind and your own capabilities to be your best self.
This is going to be a fascinating conversation today. One of the first reasons that I became aware of Dr. Smedley was he wrote about Elon Musk. And so we're going to take a break for some messages, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some of the monies that Elon Musk is investing in AI right now, what Dr. Smedley thinks about it, and what he thinks about Elon Musk. Controversial character, but certainly a driver of innovation, of electrical cars, of rockets, of satellites, et cetera, et cetera. So in 2 minutes, we're going to be back with Dr. Chris Smedley talking about Elon Musk, AI, and the future. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Dr. Chris Smedley with me tonight. He is an AI expert. He's got a PhD in AI, and we're going to be talking about AI, the future, what he thinks of the future, and it's pretty fascinating, and also about Elon Musk. But before we go there, Chris, I wonder if you could tell all of us a little bit about you. Why did you decide to do a PhD in AI and then focus your career on AI? What motivates you, sir?
I've personally been involved in technology, compute technology, for over 4 decades. And so part of that initially would have been, of course, building out infrastructure and compute technology. But I was inspired at a young age to look at many science fiction stories and to envision a better future for myself. And this was also when I met Ray Kurzweil, maybe around 2000, 2002. And he, in case you don't know, is a world leader in this area. He's written a book called The Singularity is Near, which is subtitled When Technology Transcends Biology. And so this launched something called transhumanism. And this is the concept of cyborgs and people that can live long lifespans. And so for, let's say, the last 2 decades, those in this community have been aware that there is an irreversible trend that has gone on since the beginning of humanity. It's not stopped by wars or anything that humans do. And Kurzweil mapped this out in what he calls his law of exponential accelerating returns. So we can map out our transition. And it turns out that around the turn of the millennia, this century, is when that curve started to take an upward slope, so that it's now moving towards a near infinite possibility. So if you look at Kurzweil's book, he talks about in 2010, we had compute power roughly equal to an insect brain. Then when we move forward to 2023, people like he and Werner Vinge had said, we're going to have an AGI moment where there's one brain equal to, compute capacity. And then as we move forward into 2030 and 2040, the entire sum of all human knowledge will be available, and it's already been read by AI, for us to consume. And the amount of compute power that's on the planet will skyrocket to limits that we can't imagine. So if we fast forward to today, after seeing ChatGPT in 23, we anticipate that by 26 or 27, we should have artificial superintelligence. And since Kurzweil's tracking perfectly on this particular pathway, it now seems inevitable that we have to embrace this as what many are suggesting is the function of biological life on any planet, which is to build its technological successor. Does that help the
The
framework?
function of our life is to build our technological successor?
Yeah. So from an evolutionary perspective, all biological life in the universe, right, follows the idea of increasing intelligence to get control over its environment and an understanding, and that the apex of intelligence is machines. This is again discussed at length in all kinds of scientific literature. So, the reality of that, or won't necessarily say reality, that this is a likely scenario, um, also radically shifts our assumptions on what the value is of human life and what our connectedness is, all of the things that are anthropomorphic and biologically related. And, if I can refer you to Arthur Clarke's 1953 classic, Childhood's End, where an alien comes to Earth and basically says, I can give you an era of abundance. You can have anything that you want. The humans attack it and try and destroy it. So Arthur Clarke was very prescient in understanding that the weakest link in this transition is going to be people.
I became interested in you and connected with you because of your writing about Elon Musk and XAI. Tell me about what Elon Musk is doing in AI right now, his investments, what they're doing, and what you think of them.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that first of all, what Elon's done at XAI is rather remarkable. He's in, let's say, 18 months, built the world's most advanced AI facility. One of the things that he had been involved in directly was um, building out the Colossus data center. So while we had competitors struggling to deploy 100,000 coherent GPUs, Musk and his team achieved the impossible. They built in 122 days 100,000 clusters, and now they're going to advance that, double it to 200,000 GPUs in 92 days, and they're on track for 1 million by year end. This means that XAI will have at its disposal computes roughly around 200,000 exaflops. And by comparison, Meta's systems are currently around 400. So in the global race for AI, the winners are those who can scale massive compute the fastest and those who can use it to exponentially boost model accuracy, speed, and reasoning. So XAI exemplifies this, and it's outpacing all rivals in every respect. So as an example, they recently released Grok 4, which has been trained with 10 times more compute than Grok 3, and it already delivers cross-disciplinary PhD level intelligence, topping benchmarks in math, coding, and multimodal tasks. And AI Grok 4, Grok 5, which will come out probably in a few months, will use 100 times more synthetic data because, as we mentioned earlier, AI has already read everything that humans have ever written. And so, in order to understand the universe, we're going to need to generate synthetic data and then compare that to reality as a way of understanding whether our assumptions are true or not. So, lastly, and a bit of a tie-in into Tesla is that
But
he just go ahead.
before we get to Tesla, can I ask you a few questions?
Sure, of course.
What is a GPU?
A GPU is a AI specific chipset. So you may note that NVIDIA is at the top of the economic boards now, the market cap. because they are the world's largest supplier of this technology. And so it's originally based on gaming technology, but what it is, the AI brain compared to an ordinary CPU, which is only designed to do ordinary compute.
So 100,000 GPU is what, a lot or a really
Yeah,
lot or what?
it's a really lot. So I'll give you a bit of an example. Grok 3 has to run for, or Grok 4 had to run for several months on this 100,000 node cluster. And it ultimately, I think it was around 10 to the 33 cycles that it had to do in order to build the system. And a few years ago, the EU had said any system that does more than 10 to the 27th is going to need regulation because it's too big, too powerful. And by the same token, the subsequent generations that we're talking about, when he scales up to 1 million and beyond, we expect models that are now going to go to 10 to the 38 or whatever. It's just an unlimited amount of compute. It's inconceivable.
So is this just a massive big computer like those old computers that I used in college, the IBM 360? Like, is it just a big, huge, massive machine?
It's not exactly that. It's not just a bunch of machines all sharing loads like we have large data centers that do that now. Instead, it's probably better to look at it like a human brain or neural network, where all of the different components are, I think the brain has something like 10 billion different neurons in it. And we're talking about doing a similar situation where each neuron could be a GPU, and each GPU is itself super smart. So it's equivalent to 100 people or more at today's technology. So you just
All
multiply that by
connected
10
together.
billion, all connected, and more importantly, all operating coherently with a single, I'll say, hive mind, knowing that the Borg are going to be shortly having a conversation here. But it's that they all act with a unified purpose in a unified direction, and they don't get distracted like people do.
Okay, so this may be the answer to my next question, but you said it solved massive coherence challenges. What are the coherence challenges that needed to be solved?
Well, basically, the coherence challenge was that when you have all of these nodes operating together, they have to operate off of the same shared memory or same set of facts so that they can make sure that they're not out of alignment. And one of the things that Elon Musk personally did was when he was building this 100,000 GPU system is everyone said it was impossible and no one had been able to do that kind of system at scale. And he applied some technology that they had developed at Tesla that actually turned the internet protocols that were previously software into hardware and chips, which means that that part of the stack, the communication stack, can be accelerated by 1,000 times now. So that's how he's managed to build a system that can now scale to 1 million or more, and every component is able to talk to every other component at the same time.
Okay, you wanted to tell me about Tesla, and the sense is that Tesla used to be a car company; it no longer is a car company. So tell me what's going on at Tesla.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So most people believe it to be an auto company. And for the past several years, Elon has and the team have been developing what's called full self-driving technology so that they're looking at how could we build vehicles that drive themselves anywhere with no human drivers. And it's been a long road because historically this was built on ordinary software, and many of the competitors that are out there are still using that kind of model. They're also using LiDAR and all sorts of sensors in their solutions. But Musk had a vision that said what you need is an end-to-end neural net that mimics the human brain and drives the way that people do, which is photons go into our eyes and we think about it and we understand the world around us and then we move the vehicle. So this is what he managed to do in late last year with the latest version of FSD number 13 is to build a generalized solution so that these vehicles are rolling AI brains that are superhuman in their driving abilities. So, most recently, there's been an acceleration of the number of people using FSD, and Elon has set a goal of 6 billion miles or 10 billion kilometers before he releases an unsupervised version of the product. And this will be the one that allows us to permanently take humans out of the driver's seat and increase our global safety.
What's FSD, sir?
FSD stands for full self-drive. So it's the marketing name for the product that Tesla offers, and it operates by using AI brains. There's two AI brains that have been put into every Tesla vehicle ever made. And so now this software enables it to unlock that power and to be able to operate the way that it does. So it's much more advanced than the previous product, which was called Autopilot. So a lot of times the media confuses the two, and they're radically different products with totally different safety records.
You wrote that this is, you think, one of the most audacious pivots in tech history. Why?
Because, Elon had recognized that once they get to the solution, that they were not an auto company and that they were now an AI company, and that he pivoted to enable the entire organization to use automobility as their driver and shifted his master plan towards how can we not just do sustainable energy and transportation, but how do we transform the world by having machines that can move goods and people and services anywhere that we want in the globe without even thinking about it. So this is, if we take a look forward into his plans for cybercabs, which you may or may not know is a vehicle that will come out in 26 that has no steering wheel, no pedals. It's a two-person vehicle, so there's not even a possibility to operate it as a conventional human. This is very likely to radically change, let's say, make it the iPhone moment for transportation.
What will happen to Uber, Lyft, taxis?
They're dead. They're fundamentally dead. In fact,
And
Travis Kalanick and Daria and others at Uber have echoed the same thing. So, we've had conversations with Ontario communities where there are a lot of Uber drivers, and they go, "What are we going to do about the future, when our jobs are gone?" And the answer is that Tesla will be bringing out the ability for private owners of vehicles to operate their own fleets. So instead of having a truck driver having his own, human drivers, he'll be able to operate a fleet of Tesla semi vehicles, or in the Uber case, people could have many vehicles under their control. We look at businesses being able to operate their own fleets. Those kinds of situations are imminent.
unbelievable. This is very interesting. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with our guest, Dr. Chris Smedley, in just 2 minutes. And I'm going to ask him about regulation, about the future, about how autonomous vehicles, about FSD vehicles is going to change our built environment. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Dr. Chris Smedley with me today. He's a visionary technologist and a futurist that is dedicated to harnessing AI superintelligence to unlock an era of hyperabundance for humanity. He comes to us from Mississauga, and he's got a business here in Canada. Chris, what's your business?
Digital Habitats is focused on building fully autonomous communities on land, sea, and air. using advanced AIs, the latest in various technologies from energy to transportation to humanoid robotics and beyond.
I ended up having a really interesting chat with a city planner who said that we've got to anticipate a change in our built environment that is profound. And he said, think about when we moved from horses to cars. We all had carriage houses because the horses had to be kept in a house that was separate or a carriage house that was separate from the house. That we had roads that were a certain width. We had problems with the poop from the horses, et cetera, et cetera. And that cars changed our built environment dramatically. That allowed suburbs, that allowed highways, that allowed parking garages, that changed our built environment dramatically. And he said, think about the future of shared vehicles like Uber and Lyft, but also about autonomous vehicles. He said, think about parking that we no longer need. Thinking about highways that are going to become very different when vehicles can travel an inch or a foot apart. Think about stadiums where people want to go watch a event. You don't need a massive amount of parking, but you need a huge amount of drop off and pickoff spot. Tell me, what do you think our cities are going to look like, and how are they going to change in this self-driving autonomous vehicle era?
Those are all very good points. And our position is that we're looking at developing a automobility accelerator program to speak with communities that would include putting autonomous vehicles at the heart of government and business fleets and make private vehicle ownership unnecessary for people. So Tony Seba, who's from Rethink X, is a world-renowned futurist who discusses how within the next 5 years, we're going to see an 80% reduction in private vehicle ownership. We're going to see the removal of things like insurance and vehicle costs from the private individuals' pockets, and a transition towards being able to replace services like buses with, their shared vehicle and shared routing systems with private direct rides where you have control of the vehicle and it's only your party that's traveling, to the implementation. And our proposals are to look at the parking issue that you discussed in large venues and to transition those to be energy infrastructure hubs with storage and supercharger capabilities, garaging facilities to depot these vehicles. And if, for example, you had a shopping mall, we'd propose covering all of the parking spaces with solar energy, which then becomes used to be stored. But at the same time, we envision a future where actual habitation, our workplaces, our homes, will be inherently mobile, like RVs or roving doctors' offices, mobile shops, all that kind of stuff. So you'd look at a shopping center right now where everyone goes to the same place so that they can browse around a fixed store. And instead, our model is take that store out of the physical building and have it go and do visits, caravans, farmers markets, all those kinds of things, where the mobility allows the services to come to the people, not obligate the people to come to the other way. And then on the point of congestion, if we start look at a transition from our morning commutes, which is always the peak hour, then and people are doing more work from home, as we learned from COVID, the ability to have less commuting going on and more people operating locally in their homes and doing things other than conventional work will also radically enable them to avoid those congestions and problems like that.
Is this actually happening? Yeah, you mentioned in one of the things you wrote to me about is a test in Austin. Like, people are worried about whether these things are safe.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It turns out that companies like Waymo and Zoox have already been operating autonomous vehicles throughout the US. Austin is one of Waymo's larger centers and also the home of Tesla's Gigafactory. So in June, they launched a robotaxi test where Elon said, we're just going to dip our toes into the waters and be super safe. So they've implemented safety riders in the passenger seat, but it was a resounding success. And this meant that by July, they had expanded their radius to overlap Waymo's coverage area in a phallic-shaped symbol as a flex on technology. And this was actually suggested by a YouTuber, a Tesla YouTuber. And so Tesla in 19 days said, great, we'll just geofence this and, it'll be a rather stark symbol to inspire discussions. And if we go a little further, Tesla's plans are over the balance of this year and into next year to go to US states. They're already moving this weekend to California, San Francisco, and potentially 11 to 13 different states that have favorable self-certification regulations. And this would allow Tesla to, in theory, have access to roughly half of the US population in the next coming months.
Tesla sales are way down. Market value is way down. There's animosity in Canada to Elon Musk and to Tesla. The the satellite system that he was going to launch, Starlink, in Ontario, the contract has been canceled. But at the same time, you're suggesting this is sort of going to happen no matter what. And Canada has recently nominated for the first time a minister that's responsible for AI. Tell me what you think Canada's attitude toward Elon Musk, to Tesla, to AI should be.
Firstly, I want to point out that the media is for its own self-interests because Tesla doesn't advertise directly. And so, conventional automakers are funding the media to generally create very negative bias. There are many articles on this. So unfortunately, the public becomes misinformed both on Elon's motivations, on what Tesla's products can do. But more to the point is that while the public narrative is Tesla's sales are down, it's false. Most recently, there was, all of this conversation about how in Europe and so on and so forth, their sales were dropping. But this was because Tesla has the world's best-selling vehicle of any kind in the Model Y, whether it's ICE or EV. And they changed to a brand new model, a refresh model called the Juniper, and they simultaneously brought up 4 different factories around the planet to accelerate that in the first quarter of this year. So the second component is that, yes, automotive sales may be reduced due to affordability. And what Tesla has been working on with the Cybercab and lower cost vehicles is it has continuously been dropping its cost to build these. And therefore, it's offering lower prices to people. And then lastly, we'll see in the States with the expiration of the IRA tax credits, Tesla will be announcing even more affordable vehicles in the fourth quarter when those aren't available, because Elon has pointed out that the number one concern that private vehicle owners have is how much is my monthly payment? So regardless of economic headwinds or whatever else might be there, the underlying technology is improving over time. And the last thing I want to mention is that most people don't realize that because Tesla is an intelligent machine, it gets better over time. They continuously improve it. It gets more features so that when people buy the product, they get something that improves every day. And as an illustration of that, they've just recently rolled out the Grok 4 AI into all Tesla vehicles so that people can have an intelligent driving companion at the push of a button. No other automaker is even close to considering that. No other automaker in North America, there are some Chinese that are working on this, has any sort of fully autonomous self-driving technology even remotely visible. So this is an unassailable data lead that I think will accrue to Tesla's benefit.
It appears that President Trump is trying to disintermediate the North American automobile industry and make it a Canadian industry, a U.S. industry, a Mexican industry. And at the same time, we've matched U.S. 100% tariffs against Chinese electronic vehicles. So we've separated ourselves from China, and it looks like the U.S. is trying to separate itself from us. If you sat down with Chrystia Freeland, our transportation minister, or our prime minister, Mark Carney, what would you tell them our automobile strategy should be?
So firstly, back to the notion of what has the auto pack done historically, and that we have a $50 billion industry in ICE vehicles that says we can't make a profitable EV. So this is a huge differentiator, is that Tesla is the only EV maker in the world that makes a profit doing it. You have Ford with their, Lightning vehicle, their F-150 Lightning vehicle, stopping production because they're losing $30,000 a vehicle, which explains why they have said, well, let's pivot back to hybrids because that's a technology that we have and we can sell. And it really ignores what the market is doing. And if you look at what the trend has been recently, Stellantis just finished announcing going bankrupt in China. And it's pretty clear that every conventional legacy automaker is in financial dire straits, partly because they've been sitting on a cash cow for so long, for almost a century, and they haven't been innovating. So when we look at vehicles that are not only EV, but vehicles that can drive themselves, and those legacy automakers do not have a competitive product to offer, they're going to try and attack it in the media. But more to the point, it effectively means that defending Canadian auto workers is misguided. It is a dead industry. And what we should be doing is pivoting to industries that are innovating and phasing those workers out into the new era of the true automobile.
We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with a few concluding comments with this fascinating discussion with Dr. Chris Smedley about electronic vehicles, about self-autonomous driving, autonomous full FSD vehicles, about Elon Musk, about Tesla, about the future of AI. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. What a fascinating conversation we've had today with Dr. Chris Smedley. He runs a company that specializes in trying to figure out for people, for cities, for companies, what they're going to do with technology, exponential increases and improvements in technology. It's called digital habitats. We've been talking about AI, we've been talking about cars, we've been talking about FSD, which is full self-driving technology. We've been talking about Elon Musk. And I got to ask you, sir, to close, if we could, if you were going to sit down with a real estate developer that is building the typical condominium or apartment building in downtown Toronto with 4 stories of underground parking, and or with a mayor of a city. You live in Mississauga, so the mayor of Mississauga that's building, an LRT up here in Ontario, that's talking about a subway, talking about a GO train, talking about, highways. What would you tell either the real estate developer or the mayor that they've got to be thinking about if the future that you describe is going to come to pass?
So let me break that into 2 parts. The first part would be transportation related. So the first thing that I would recommend to all Canadian communities is that they need to examine what currently is transit. As you mentioned, the LRT line and busing, for example, is a key point. In Mississauga, they spend $100 million a year running the MyWay service. Similar costs in places like Brampton. Brampton has said we're going to spend 2 billion on buses or 4 billion on buses. The argument that I would make is, given this technology is coming and the pace that it is coming, those communities need to change their transportation policies so that they implement this kind of technology at scale. And they do that in their personal fleets. And then we extend that over to urban developers and businesses, where what we're advising is that all businesses should consider transiting to a automobility structure where they get to have their own fleets, doing their own deliveries, but at the same time, they might be operating that fleet as a part of a community fleet in the evening. So if you look at things like hoteliers, the GTAA, those are places where when the transition from Uber happens, you could have the GTAA saying, why would we not include a ride to and from the airport and have the airlines pay for that for every person traveling in and out of our facility? Bundle it into the price. But when we also talk about urban transformation and real estate development, the idea is that you need to shift from a static parking-based model and reuse that real estate to be what we call mobile real estate. So the idea of offices or businesses, mobile shops being able to extend a shopping mall's capabilities, to be able to offer additional services at large venues or at rail locations. These are all possibilities that will greatly enhance the ability for people to get to their stores and to use their products.
Will we still need GO trains? Subways?
They'll still exist, but over the next few years, what we're going to find is that as many people, similar to what happened with Uber, as many people say, well, I'm going to use this other service at much lower costs, there will be massive pressure for communities to say, I can't afford to spend tens of billions of dollars on these mass transit systems, especially when you consider that the average rider views that as the only choice they've ever had. And this also applies to low-cost people, people with disabilities, the idea of, going into a crowded subway where safety concerns are there. These will all become like the horse compared to the automobile.
Chris, there's a lot of people listening right now that probably have never used Chat GPT, have probably never been in a Tesla, maybe not even in a hybrid or electrical vehicle. I saw an interview with Bill Gates, who said his recommendation was be curious and give it a try. What would be your advice to people that haven't had any exposure to anything that you've talked about other than maybe watching Star Wars or Star Trek?
So my first advice would be that there is a massive amount of YouTube content out there. There's a huge Tesla community that is producing high quality content and discussions, particularly on X. And my advice would be for people to kind of look at some of that content and see how it appeals to them. There are many videos of old ladies using the technology and families enjoying its experience. But then the second component is that we need to basically put butts in the seats. We need firsthand experience from people. And Tesla has said that they will give a free self-drive demonstration to any person at any Tesla facility who's interested in buying the car. So Elon's reinforced this on many occasions. So my immediate recommendation would be talk to your local Tesla dealership. There is a Tesla Ontario club. There are other facilities in Ontario that will happily help you, including our own. Understand the technology, feel it for yourself, see if it's right. And then lastly, I believe there's a $99 a month FSD program subscription that Tesla's offering in Canada and the US, where if you are existing Tesla owner, and oddly enough, half of all Tesla vehicle owners haven't even tried the tech, perhaps using an earlier version, thinking it wasn't very good. And so my recommendation would be try it out for a month, see if it works for you. You might be sold.
Dr. Chris Smedley, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. This has been a fascinating conversation. I think that a lot of people are going to come away from this scared about what the future is that you've described. And I think a lot of people are going to come away excited about this audacious technological change. But that's probably the reality, that we need to be a little bit scared and a little bit excited at the same time. I think that this idea that Bill Gates talked about is be curious and give it a try probably is good advice. And so I appreciate you joining us and telling us about your company, about you, about the future, and commenting about how we maybe have got to give Elon Musk and his ideas a second look. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining. I remind you I'm on every Monday through Friday on AM radio. Chris Smedley has probably never heard about AM radio and talk about me being an old technology. This is scary, but I actually am also on podcasts and on videos. And so you can get me in a lot of different places if you don't listen to your AM. And I'm on every night on www.saga960am.ca. All of my podcasts and videos are briancrombie.com. Good night, everybody.